Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Art of Hunting podcast. This is, I think, take 5 on this one. Every time I hit record, I've been getting interrupted. We've had a guy out servicing our tractor and all kinds of stuff going on here today in the studio. So we are going to give this one a shot. Hope you guys are doing well. Here we're transitioning. Turkey season is about over here, and we're headed into summer. And we also are transitioning some stuff around here in the office and the studio. And we have a lot of really cool stuff coming out. So today I'm going to do an episode on new subject matter and how I approach those things, what I take into consideration, and how I will paint those. But first, though, I want to mention our custom turkey prints. We have done those for 4 years. It's been really cool to see people commemorate their harvest, submit their information and photos to us. And the way that works is you submit your picture and your information, the hunter, the location, the specs of the bird, and a brief description of the hunt. And what we do is we collect those online, download them, format them onto one of our pre-printed shells, and then we print your information and your photo on top of my art, my wild turkey art that's pre-printed. And they've been pretty cool. A lot of people have really enjoyed them, but they have really they're very labor intensive on me. By the time we coordinate with the purchaser, get their information, their specs, get it printed, handle any tech issues we might have, roll them, ship them, all that kind of stuff. And one thing that I'm really trying to do here is streamline and set myself up to be able to paint more and create more new work. So we have just got to a point where we need to phase those out. I'm still looking for a new customizable sort of turkey product or something that's cool and unique for turkey hunters. Maybe it's not personalized, but I'm still trying to figure that out. But in the meantime, we're going to do away with the personalized turkey prints that we produce here. And so you can get those at ryankirby.com. I think we had 100 shells printed for the Eastern, and then we have different quantities for the Rio, Merriam's, and Osceola. And once those are gone, they're gone. We're just not going to reorder them. So check them out. Grateful for you guys that have purchased and for those of you guys who have left, good reviews and enjoy them. But the next phase of our business is just got to be, we're not going to be able to offer those. So anyway, those will be done. Get them at ryankirby.com, and let's go ahead and get into today's topic. I am a big fan of painting and drawing things that I know. A lot of times I'll sketch some things that might be foreign to me. I've sketched like alligators and frogs and things like that just to stay sharp and kind of polish my drawing skills, hone my eye, learn to evaluate shapes and anatomy on different animals differently. All of those things are designed to help my deer and turkey and elk work. But for the most part, if I'm going to spend a significant amount of time, like 40 to 60 hours or whatever in my studio, I like to paint things that I know. And the reason being, as an artist, you've really got to know your subject. You've really got to know their habits, their habitat, their anatomy, how they engage with their habitat. You've got to know how a deer jumps over a fence to be able to portray that. And so one of the things that I've always tried to do is only paint things that I really know well. And I tell everybody all the time, animals take bad photos too, just like people. And, you can look at a photo of someone that's just a bad photo, and they're in the middle, their eyes are closed, or they're in the middle of a weird facial expression. And as you've seen enough people to know that that's just not right. It was just a bad photo at a bad time. Well, a lot of times, animals are moving in the wild. They have a weird leg position, or they were ducking under a fence awkwardly, or just something happened. And as a hunter, that's not right. It's like, nah, that's just a weird pose. Their legs don't really do that. Or, his ears are just in a weird spot, or his rack looks cockeyed. And it's important to be able to know those things and to correct them on your canvas. The only way that you know those things is if you know the animal, you know their habitat, you know all those things inherently about them. And a lot of times I find myself, as I go through my career, fixing things on canvas. Just my gut tells me this is wrong, so I'm going to paint it differently. And that's hard to do on a new subject because you don't know them as well. And you have a tendency to be a slave to your reference photo and just paint whatever's in that photo. If the photo's great, then you don't have a problem. But if that's a bad photo or something is odd, you got a problem, because that's going to show up in your painting. And people that really know that subject matter are going to know the difference and know that it's inauthentic. So what happens, though, is eventually you have a project come along, or a client come along, or, for example, like these Winchester boxes have been mainly things that I've painted: deer, turkey, elk, pheasants. And so the request for a mule deer is different for me, but I've already done all the others. And of course I'm going to take the project. But you have clients that come along and they might request something that you're not intimately familiar with. And so how do you approach that? Well, my general rule of thumb is I'm going to really research that animal, that species. That's the first thing I'm going to do. It's going to start with a Google search. I'm going to see what's out there, what kind of things that I can find as far as images. I love watching YouTube videos of the animals. You can learn a lot by that. You can learn a lot about an animal and how they move by watching videos of them. For example, one of the things that you've got to do when you paint bucks fighting is you've got to have a lot of tension, a lot of musculature going on there, because deer, for the most part, they don't separate and then run together like rams hitting heads. They come together, they sidestep, they bristle up, their ears are back, and then they lock horns. And most of the battle for a really intense whitetail fight is pushing. It's not running, and they're the offensive line. They're not the safety coming with an 8-yard head start trying to tackle a running back. They're the offensive line. They start from a short distance and they push back and forth a lot. And so you've got to know that, because in order to portray that pushing, you've got to have a lot of tension in their back legs. Their front legs almost don't even bear any weight if you really look at them. But their back muscles, the back strap area and their back legs are extremely tense, as is their neck. And watching a video of bucks fight can show you a lot of that you can subconsciously translate or consciously translate into your work. So I will start with some video, watching, mule deer walk and how they move and this and that and the other. I will observe, photography. I'll look at just a variety of different stuff. And then I'll do some sketching. I'll play with some poses, some ideas, some concepts. What I did for this mule deer is I bought the reference off of Don Jones, who's a really great photographer for Western big game. But even with his photo, one of the back legs was cut off, and the deer looked like it kind of had an overbite. This specific deer had just a little bit something different about his muzzle. And so I've got to fix those things before I go to canvas. And again, you only learn these things by doing a lot of research, a lot of evaluating, a lot of looking at photos and videos. And so then what I'll do is I'll take that, I'll sketch that out on canvas, and then as I work, I'm constantly evaluating it. So When I paint whitetails, turkeys, I'm kind of getting into a groove where I know what I want to show. I know how to paint. I've kind of gotten in a rhythm. But for some of these like mule deer and trout, I've got to constantly go back and reevaluate. Is this really accurate? Are the spots on this trout really this color, or are they more this color? Do they need to go more yellow? Do they need to go more blue? So as I work a little bit more slowly, a little bit more carefully, and I try not to rely on knowledge I know of other species. So, for example, whitetails. I'm going to try not to get into my whitetail painting groove and paint things that end up looking like a whitetail. So, for example, the shape of the ears on the mule deer. Mule deer obviously have much bigger ears than a whitetail. How does that actually translate? Because they also have way bigger racks too. So if I paint a mule deer with what I think is normal in my normal whitetail brain, I'm going to have those ears are going to be a little bit more angular. They're not going to be as big. The rack's not going to be as big. And you'll basically paint a whitetail with forked G2s. You don't want to do that. So you've got to constantly evaluate where you're going, what you're doing, and make it accurate to a mule deer, not fall back on what you know about whitetails. The trout is a completely different animal. What I found when I started looking at a lot of trout reference online is that a lot of it is AI generated, which is crazy to me these days. If you go look at type in jumping rainbow trout or jumping trout, there's a ton, probably the majority of what you find in like a Google image search is going to be AI generated, which is very dangerous because AI doesn't know the difference between a brook trout and a Chinook trout and a rainbow trout. And a lot of these AI things, they just combine trout in general. And there's some really cool images there. Don't get me wrong. There's some really great, like, wow, that's an awesome image and looks almost like a photo, but then you've got to, you look around a little bit, you can tell it's like digitally created, but then you start looking and it's like, that trout has like a, kind of a Chinook mouth with a rainbow on it. And you can tell that the AI is generating from a lot of different sources and you get this weird sort of hybrid trout. So again, you can't rely on the reference. You can't just Google it and then paint from that. Not only, it's illegal to just paint somebody's photo, but you will get yourself into a bad spot as an artist just repping that stuff out because it shows that you don't know what you're doing and you didn't do your homework. So what I actually did for this is Field and Stream wanted me to do a retro cover, to paint a retro cover in my style. And so I basically had the composition, I had to keep the composition the same. So a fisherman in a red shirt further upstream with some pines going over the top, and then a jumping rainbow trout trying to eat some fresh hatch, some new hatch on the river. And I had to keep that composition. The trout had to be jumping in the same direction, same sort of proportions, things like that. But I wanted to do it in my own way. So what I actually did is I found some photography that I got, some stock photos of a guy holding a rainbow trout. And then I took, brook trout, my bad. And then I took that fish and warped it into a jump. So I basically took it out of his hands and warped it into a jumping shape. Came up with the photography of the river, which was a stock photo, another stock photo I found and purchased. And then I had my buddy Jonathan. We went into the one of the rivers around here in Boone one day after work, and he went up and modeled for me. I needed someone in sort of they're not casting. It wasn't a casting pose, but more of the guy just looked up downstream and saw a jumping brook trout and he's about to move in on him. That kind of a pose. Kind of like the fake surprised pose that you see all the time. So I had to take a bunch of, I had to really, because I'm not a massively familiar brook trout, I'm not a huge brook trout fly fisherman guy, I had to be more careful in how I approach this. I wasn't able to just rely on previous information. I had to do a lot of research on it to get it done right. And I had to pick and choose where I got my materials if I wasn't going to shoot the photos myself. And I ended up creating like a huge storyboard of probably 20 or 30 different images. I pulled some close, tied-up photography of the trout's side that I felt like was a really good color-accurate representation of the trout, and then pulled my color palette from there. And so I basically had this big storyboard of trout imagery, trout images, color samples, sketches, textures, things like that. And I spent maybe a day, like a full day, building this out, building what I wanted the colors to look like, the anatomy, how bright are the highlights on these fins really, not just looking at one photo and taking that photo's word for it, but looking at a variety of different stuff. And then once that was done, I started narrowing down the actual composition, how the splash was going to work, the colors in the water, how dark the treetops were going to be, things like that. And then from there, I repped that out on canvas. And so you can, the way that I choose to, long story short, the way that I choose to approach new work on unfamiliar subject matter is just to do way more research on the front end. You know, it's like the old construction saying, you know, measure twice, cut once. And you really need to measure like 8 times and then cut once on this, because as an artist, it takes a long time to produce the end result, right? And so, you know, when you measure twice, cut once, that cut's taking a few seconds. Well, the cutting of an original oil painting may take a week, and you don't want to get to the end of that week and realize you made a bunch of decisions wrong, or you looked at the wrong reference, or you're confused. You don't want to get to the end of that week and realize you jacked something up. So do a lot more work on the front end, and then pay a lot more attention as I go. That's what I tend to do. What else is going on? I attended I'm actually in the middle of doing a workshop for a guy named Dustin Van Winchell, super talented artist. And this is, you know, speaking of new subject matter, I'm learning some new techniques in the studio. One thing that I have been bad about in previous years is just we've been so busy the past couple years just trying to get things done and getting new prints done and put out fires, and we've had Chinese knockoff copyrights and just all kinds of crap going on. And I've been so busy doing things, I haven't taken the time to learn any new things. I haven't taken the time to try new things and experiment. And that was something that was really foundational to me early in my career, was just trying new things, trying new techniques and new ways of mixing paint and new palettes and this and that and the other. And I've gotten away from that. And so one of the things that I'm going to do better in 2024, and especially going into the spring and summer when we're not as busy, is reevaluating a bunch of things, questioning some of the methods I've got and what I can do better, and trying to learn. And I've signed up for a workshop from Dustin. And he's a dude, I met him years ago at the Southeastern Wildlife Expo. And he was the featured artist then. I loved his work and have ever since. He's just a great, great artist. And he does some courses online where basically you just watch him paint. It's like a Zoom call, and you watch him paint. He talks about his process, and it is unbelievable to me how good he is at painting and discussing his process, and how like I'm notorious for going into a different mind space when I paint, and I'm a space cadet, and you can walk in and interrupt me painting, and I can barely say my name. Like I can't form a sentence. You can ask me a question, and I'm confused. Like it takes me a long time to come out of painting mode to be able to like answer questions and do basic math and things like that. But Dustin can talk and answer questions while he's working, and it doesn't seem to affect him at all. I mean, it might, but it doesn't appear to. And just learning from another artist who's more accomplished and learning how he does things and what his approach is and what's going through his mind when he mixes this color and that color. Those are some of the things that I'm really interested in and want to get better at, because I've always approached this game as I'll never fully understand it, and it's going to take my whole life to master, and I'll still never get there. But I think that that's a healthy attitude to have, going into this continually hungry and continually wanting to improve. And so that's something else that's new that's going on, and really is a kind of a fundamental part of my career, my approach to art, my approach to everything. And I really like to learn. I like to learn from people that are more accomplished than me. And I like to keep a fresh, curious mind. And, when you're really busy, when you're under deadlines all the time, when you're dealing with stuff and the stresses and the strains of running a business and having little kids and just life more than anything, you can lose that curiosity and you can get into execution mode real quick. I just got to get this done. I got to get that done. And I think that that's a dangerous place for me personally as an artist, because what will happen is you'll get so dug into the trenches of doing things the same way over and over and over and over again, that the world's going to change, or, something may happen and you miss some opportunities. So I really try to stay flexible there. That's about all I've got for today's solo episode. We've got some great guests coming up. I just booked, my buddy Jonathan is going to come out next week, and we're going to talk about art as an investment and do a video podcast for that. He's our investment guy, really good dude. He mostly messes with stock market, S&P 500 and the Dow and stuff like that. And he's going to come out and talk about some of the non-traditional investments like art, gun collections, sporting memorabilia, stuff like that. So that's one I'm looking forward to. And then a lot of my buddies in the outdoor industry that I have not yet had a chance to get on here, I want to start getting them on too. So you guys don't have to listen to me ramble. Anyway, get your custom turkeys at ryankirby.com. Look forward to the Field and Stream stuff dropping soon, any day now by the time this podcast airs. I appreciate you being here, and hope you guys had a great turkey season. For those of you that are in the northern states, hope you're hanging on. And turkey hunting's different when there's leaves on the trees, I've found. It seems like every year it takes so long for the leaves to get green and for the buds to pop, and we're in that phase of like just kind of leafless trees, and you can hear gobbles for a lot longer. You got to be a little bit more careful walking through the woods, and then I feel like you blink and there's fully formed leaves and foliage and cover everywhere. Turkeys can be weird. They can also be awesome and work really great. You can't hear gobbles as far. You can get away with more slipping and moving because you've got more cover. But I feel like there's always that time of year where it just changes so fast. So if you guys are still up north, best of luck next couple weeks, and hope everybody had a great turkey season and is ready for summer. Thanks for being here. Check us out next week.